I suppose the first thing I want to start with is the UK's response to the refugee crisis in Ukraine. We know that now millions of people have been displaced by the war in Ukraine, and I just wonder, when you compare the UK government response to this crisis to perhaps other crises, if there is a hierarchy that has emerged here in terms of our treatment of those in need.
That's a very important point that you're raising, because the current Ukrainian refugee crisis is of large proportions, but it's not the only one of large proportions. We have had, the Afghan and the Syrian crisis, and we have the Yemenis crisis that is ongoing. What we're seeing is a very different approach, both in the use of language, the ways in which the UK and also Europe more generally, including Eastern European countries who've had quite an harsh anti-migrant, anti-refugee language, are now using words like, brothers and sisters, while in the past they were using words like terminology like, threat, etc., etc. So we're seeing definitely a different language, and that of course translates into different actions. So we're seeing a much more welcoming protection scheme and hosting scheme across Europe that we haven't seen in the past. And that does raise the question as to whether there is a hierarchy of deserving and undeserving refugees, and what that hierarchy means in terms of our attitudes, and there is an undertone of racism, because these are European refugees, and we've had in the past refugees who were not from Europe.
Do you see a difference with those things in mind? Do you see a difference between the government response and the overwhelming response from the UK public, where thousands upon thousands of people have signed up to have Ukrainian refugees in their homes?
There is a connection, I think, between public attitudes and government attitudes. So the language that governments use is then affecting how the population responds. So I believe that this overwhelming generosity, which I very much welcome and value, might have been there also for Afghans and Syrian refugees had the government approach been more welcoming. We have seen 10 years of what has been described as a hostile environment. And therefore, people might respond to that overwhelming media and political approach in a certain way. And now that we have a return to a more welcoming environment, we see that the British population are very generous and they are open.
Do you think that the resettlement program for Ukrainian refugees is going to work?
I think it's a well-intentioned program. I think that the implementation will be very challenging, and we will see the outcome in the next 6 months. My forecast is that there will be multiple issues with this program. First of all, it's the red tape and the admin. Second, human resources. Who is going to do the checks and pair refugees and families? Who is going to monitor the families? Because hosting a refugee is not just about giving them a room. It also requires checks and monitoring and support. Is that support in place? What happens if some support systems break down? What I don't see is I see it as an emergency response that is, very, very quick at the moment, but I don't see how the plan would work efficiently when it is so rapid. And I'm not sure that all the different elements will work. I hope that the government will follow the examples of existing schemes that are already in place from the NGO sector, such as the charity Homes for Refugees, because they have well-established systems in place, and there could be lots of lessons to be learned.
I know that you have helped refugees in the past. You've had refugees staying with you, and I just wonder if you can use that experience to, I suppose, guide us into what is required when you welcome people into your home who have fled awful circumstances. How difficult actually is it to help them become part of society and to feel at home and to resettle?
Yeah, I have hosted, and I plan to continue hosting refugees. The ones I've hosted have been from non-European countries, from Iran and Eritrea. And it has been an incredible experience. I highly recommend it. It is really an encounter, with somebody from a different culture, and it's a learning experience. So is something very valuable. However, it's not just about offering a room. It really is a way of fostering somebody, fostering a family, because these will be people who have fled war. They will be traumatized, so they will need emotional support and listening. They may, burst into tears. They will also be half in this country trying to adjust to, health systems, a new language, and new ways of operating, the welfare system, etc., etc. They will need support for that. But at the same time, they will have their husbands, their brothers, their mothers, maybe the elderly, in Ukraine or in refugee camps or in other European countries. So they will be in the UK, but they will be connected transnationally. And therefore, being a host means also to listen to these stories more broadly.
I suppose then, in summary, Georgia, how are you feeling about the arrival of potentially thousands of Ukrainians to the UK? Do you think that we are underprepared, prepared? Is this going to become a bit of a culture shock for people in the UK as well, to some extent?
I think that we could be better prepared because refugee crises have happened and unfortunately will continue to happen. So we could be better prepared, but given the circumstances, I think that it is very good that this crisis has led to a change in attitudes. I think that's a very positive sign. If there is only something positive about it, is the kind of welcoming reception that we are witnessing. And I hope that this is not just for a case of exceptional refugees, the Ukrainians, but that it can be extended to all refugees. If we could really use this crisis to prepare and to expand what we're learning to other refugees, I think it could really be a sign of a good, positive change.
Georgia, I'm very grateful for you taking the time to speak to me. Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
You're very welcome. Bye.